All right, brother, episode 200.
We did it. We made it, Pat. Whatever happens next, they can't take that from us. 200 episodes. How about it?
Is that wild? And neither one of us,
Yeah,
not even chase numbers, couldn't care less about numbers. And I think
right.
just randomly we're texting back and forth about when to do this show. And I was like, let me check. I'm like, oh, it's show 200. Like, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And so you had the good idea of maybe we take a little walk down memory lane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and certainly there are shows that have a lot more output than us and some that have less. But so for the listeners that might not know, we record about on a weekly cadence. So if you think about the number 200 represents about 4 years of consistent episodes, which
Yeah, man.
it's not bad considering
No.
your full-time responsibilities and my schedule that
Yourself
gets
as
in the
well,
way.
yeah.
So
Made it happen. Oh, and I should say, anybody who's a consistent listener knows I'm terrible at saying what I should say at the beginning of the show, but I'll say it because actually we get some cool new news, which is, first of all, thanks everybody for helping support the show. If you'd like to continue doing that, very not random, we offer a bunch of really cool, they're called cycles. They're basically like mini programs you can follow to get your first strict pull-up, your first kipping pull-up, your first ring muscle-up, to get your handstand walk. There's a whole bunch of those. There's barbell stuff as well. There's running. But there's a few new ones that we've launched. So historically speaking, we had a classic capacity program for deadlift, back squat, shoulder press, and bench press. We took those four down and we revamped them. And they were just classic, like, linear progression stuff that honestly they're a dime a dozen everywhere that you go. And we made them into like totally new, like nothing you've seen before. They're not linear progressions. They're more of a mixed modality feel. They're modulating intensity. You get high effort days, low effort days, like really cool stuff. The deadlift one is done and up and available now. So is the back squat. So is the shoulder press. The bench press should be done soon. And then the other new program that we have is a jump rope foundations program, which I feel like
oh, my
we
man,
tried to
Chris
to
Rollins, yeah.
launch like a long time ago. We finally got it up, and so it's a self-contained. I think it's 6 week start to finish of get you single unders, double unders, running step singles, arm crossovers, like with the progressions of all the stuff that you want to learn with the jump rope. Super cool. Stoked about that. We'll have to get the mastermind behind that program, Chris, on the show with us to kind of talk through it. So there's some really cool stuff is my point. Go to verynotRandom.com, check that out. And then if you're a gym owner, btwb's got the all-in-one. You want to take advantage of that. It can do workout tracking, gym management, billing, the whole 9 yards, all in the same software. So check that out. And so here we are,
Dude,
200 shows.
I'm excited just to park there for a second. I knew that some of those were coming down the pipe. I did not know the jump rope was ready to go. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's live.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's live. Yep.
I've been harping on this for a long time. Long-time listeners will know, but I really think that the jump rope is an overlooked tool when you start thinking about coordination and just learning how to be more of a finesse athlete, which once you start getting out of the raw power phase of your CrossFit infatuation, you'll come to realize that it's really important to stay coordinated. So that's a great tool. You don't have to like switch over to being a jump rope guy full time, but man, just a couple minutes every day really goes a long way. So check that one out.
100%. And how do you want to do this one? This is a loosey-goosey
know.
show. I mean, we can just hit bullet
Yeah.
points, things that, hit over your head from having done 200 different topics, interviews, the whole 9 yards, you kind of mentioned like where we are now, what's changed in the landscape, what's the same? Does anything kind of stick out to you?
Yeah. Well, hey, man, on a personal level, I'll say that my responsibilities with CrossFit have changed. Like right when we first started this show, I was still straddling a couple different worlds within the CrossFit landscape as far as like my job with them. I was working still some in the education department, some in the games. And then in 2021, once we'd had the show going for a little bit, I switched over full time to the games. So, I guess all that to say, what I really find helpful for me personally, what I get out of this is that it does still give me a touchstone to talk about what I really have as my first passion, coaching and training and what it means to have longevity in both of those domains. This is a real nice touchstone for me to continue to kind of get out there in that regard. I don't get the opportunity to coach people directly as often as I'd like. Every once in a while I do, but for the most part, that's something I just don't have on the schedule these days. So on a personal level, it's a real pleasure to be able to share some of the things that I've learned over the years, share some experiences I've had, and kind of keep that connection with that educational end of things. Because for me, that's what it was all about in the beginning. So yeah, so I appreciate the listeners for, you know, keeping coming back and giving us this platform that we can do that.
Man, 100%. And when we first started the show, I only had 2 kids, not 3. So so a lot a lot has changed
You
there.
had
And
an achy breaky hip too.
yeah, I got a total hip replacement, all
Yeah.
that deal, and I selfishly love the show for so many reasons. First of all, not to give you too much credit, let your head swell, but I think you're one of the sharpest cats in CrossFit, so I
Oh,
enjoy
thanks.
just hearing your opinion on things, and then just selfishly also like this is like mandatory weekly professional development, which
Yeah,
directly relates
totally.
to, like what I do with Linchpin. Like I'm immersed in that constantly, like constantly programming, constantly hearing people's stories, constantly getting their data and feedback. And then on this show, I get to hear your opinions on things. I get to take questions from people outside of that community, and we get to interview all kinds of fascinating individuals in the
Yeah.
CrossFit space and out of the CrossFit space, hear what works for them, what doesn't work for them, their lessons learned, like link together the commonalities between all of that, see if there's something useful to take there. So like it's so beneficial and enriching as far as I'm concerned on a lot of levels that it's great. So I'm very happy and pleased on a bunch of levels. So, you
Yeah, well,
know,
hey, and not for nothing, it's also nice to get the time with you, Pat. You know, and we've
oh
known each other a
man,
long time, and
been a bit.
as I think most adults find in their lives, time just slips away on you, and before you know it, you haven't talked to people that you've known for a long time, and those relationships can kind of wane. So it is nice to have that touch point as well on a personal level.
Time,
So,
time flies.
yep.
So, what's funny is like if somebody asked me, like looking back over 200 episodes, like what jumps out at you?
Mm.
There's certainly plenty of shows that we did that I don't remember.
Yeah, yes, for
and,
sure.
and I'm sure they're wonderful. I'm sure they're
Okay,
wonderful.
old man.
Yeah, I'm sure they're wonderful. But one of the things that I would say, if you asked me to, would be how it has just been a reoccurring theme that there's not one way to the finish line. Like, and I
Mm,
know in my younger years, I thought there was the way to do it, the
mhm.
way to get fit, the way to get strong, the way to train. And if you deviated from it, it was heresy and dumb and whatever. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And now, whether we're talking to an Olympic lifter like Chad Vaughn or Matty Rogers, or we're talking to a gymnast like Dave Durante, or that D1 football coach Ryan
Mm,
Davis that we talked to, all these people in all these different disciplines, like the commonalities, they're all trying to get their people fitter, faster, and stronger. They all have their different ways that they do it, and they're all arriving at their objective, whether it's this many sessions a week, that many sessions a week. It's an AM and a PM. They embrace accessory work. They don't embrace accessory work. They, like whatever it is, they're all getting there. And it like that has really been a recurring theme in a lot of people that we've interviewed is these wildly different approaches. And people are still getting fitter, faster, and stronger. So shocking. There's not one way to do it. And the results should speak for themselves. So whether you do heavy lift plus Metcon, whether you don't do that, whatever it is, if your lifts are going up, you're getting more rounds of Cindy. When you go for the track days that they're improving, it's working. Like whatever you're doing is
yeah.
working. And so that's been something that's just, it's been good to keep me level headed.
Yeah, I'll give you something a little more subtle on that same tack. It's cool that we get to interview people from these different worlds that, they kind of overlap, but in many ways they're very different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's nice to be in a position in 2025 now. Hard to believe that that's where we are. But nice to be in a position where you tell somebody that, hey, primarily we are talking about CrossFit. That's our audience. That's what we do. And they don't look at you like you got 3 heads. That for some of the newer listeners, I mean, that might not be a big deal because that's what you know. But Pat and I have both been around long enough where there was a time in the not too distant past where if you were to talk to somebody from a quote unquote legitimate discipline about
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit,
Right,
they would
fair.
immediately dismiss you and they really wouldn't want to have much to do with you because it was seen as something that just wasn't that legit or it was very fringe or whatever. But now I think there is like a pretty good understanding that, hey man,
Mm-hmm.
the GPP is the outcome. and that is exactly what they're training for. And for that end, man, CrossFit is super effective. Even if, yeah, maybe that's not what I'm going to do to win worlds at weightlifting, there's an understanding of why it's being done and an acceptance that like the method works. So that to me has been really cool. Not just to see that the attitude has shifted, but to see also kind of the doors that it opens up for those conversations from some of these different people, and that sharing of knowledge that can happen within that, I think is great.
Well, I think years ago it was seen as just random nonsense.
Right, exactly.
Like it wasn't seen as like a valid methodology and training protocol that was exactly what we said, like measurable, observable, and repeatable. It was just you guys just do random stuff every day, pulled out of
Yeah,
a
it's just
hopper
thoughtless.
at whim. It's thoughtless, and if you're uninitiated to training, of course it's going to work for a while, but
Right.
you'll plateau, you'll regress, you'll whatever it will be, it won't turn out well. And now just so many years have gone by, and so many people from so many different disciplines have been exposed to it in one way, shape, or form, reaped the benefits. And I mean, now with you've got more than 2 decades of literature, athletes, and everything under your belt. It's really tough to say that it doesn't work, And so,
Mhm.
and I think
Yeah.
everybody more so now than ever understands like that good base of GPP is so wonderfully beneficial to darn near any discipline that
Mhm.
it's everywhere. So yeah, that is pretty cool just to see it's immediately recognized.
Yeah. No, it's
I
great.
would I would kind of also say things that stick out in my head for better or for worse, and this is not meant to come off as like harsh or insensitive, but it's something that I say all the time is fitness is easy, people are hard.
Yep.
I stand by that. I stand by that after 200 episodes. And what I mean by that is,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, fitness is hard too. It takes discipline. It takes perseverance. You got to get up on the cold mornings. You got to choose discomfort, over
Yeah.
comfort. You need to exert yourself. If you don't work hard, you're not going to get the results that you want. Like,
Got to do it when you don't want to.
you have to follow something that makes sense. Like, so all that stuff's hard. I get that. The power clean is harder than a bicep curl. Got it. But that stuff pales in comparison to how difficult people are. And what I mean by that is people are just so hard on themselves, and they can't get out of their own way or give themselves like a break or give themselves some grace and just realize that, every day doesn't have to be perfect. Every workout doesn't have to be perfect. Like, you're allowed to be a human being, that some days your motivation's high, other days your motivation is low. The fact that you didn't PR your back squat doesn't necessarily now mean that your last 10 years of training are in the toilet and totally worthless. Like, what matters is the fact that you are back squatting. Like, what's on the bar is a useful metric for measuring many things in your training life. But what matters is that you did walk into your garage gym when you didn't want to, and you back squatted, and that hopefully you'll still be doing that 10 years from now. That's what matters. What's on the bar matters way less than the act and the effort. If you do the act, the functional movement, and you do it with an appropriate amount of effort for wherever you are in your training cycle, I don't give the backside of a rat what the load on the bar was, right? And that's,
Yeah.
or the fact that you're 15 seconds slower on Helen than you were 6 months ago doesn't mean anything is right or wrong in your training. It could just mean you didn't push as hard, could mean you didn't sleep as well, could mean you're stressed out at work, could mean the last 3 days of training hit you in a different way than you thought. It doesn't mean that Helen didn't have training value because you didn't PR. It's still a wonderful session. Like, those things, like inside people's minds, the psyche of the athlete, and getting them to just chill a little bit and understand the value of training and stacking bricks in the wall is so much more difficult than just writing effective programming. It's so much more difficult. So fitness is
Yeah.
easy, people are hard. I'm going to stand by that.
No, I completely agree. And I think that as a piggyback off of that, I hope that our message that really comes through time and time again over these 200 episodes is like, yeah, what you're talking about. A lot of times those details are going to fall away given enough time, and they don't, sure they matter, but maybe a lot less than most people consider that they matter in the short term. And what really does matter is, are you committed to staying the course? Because at the end of the day, that's where you're really going to start to see the benefits. It's not about, hey, I've got 5 pounds more on my deadlift. It's about, I'm 75 and still deadlifting.
100%,
And that
dude.
divide between me and my peers at that age is so wide that I'm basically a different animal. Like that's the goal, you know?
Yes.
That's what I think all of us want. Whether we can articulate it in that way or whether that's something that's top of mind, it kind of doesn't matter. But at its heart, to me, that's the most important thing is like, hey, look, like you got to keep your eye on that long view because a single session, it could go great. It could be terrible. But at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter. What matters is that you keep stacking up those single sessions, to your point.
And make decisions, right? Now we're going to get on a tangent. You know, like I'm at a phase, and I'm okay with this. Like I'm at a phase in my fitness journey. I've been doing this CrossFit, you know, for I guess 20 years now, since I started in 2005. I am never going to PR Fran ever again. Ever in my entire life. If my family was held hostage and they said, you've got to hit a lifetime PR, they would vanish from the face of the earth. Like it's just not there. So if I'm never going to PR Fran ever again for the rest of my life, and so everyone is going to be a worse than it was at my best. Like, does that mean it doesn't have training value? Like, no, that's nonsense. Like at a certain point in time in my life, if I continue to back squat, the number's not going to go up anymore. Like it's going to plateau and then it's going to go down, you know? And so it's just one of those deals where if you want to be in this for the long haul, it's just great to have everybody loves PRs. PRs are fantastic.
Sure. Yeah.
But understand like what you're doing, it depends upon the phase of your life, is the training value and making sure that you're covering your bases. If you want to be fit, fast, and strong and healthy and stay out of the nursing home as long as possible, like that classic CrossFit stuff, then you don't necessarily need a hell in PR, as cool as it is. You need to make sure that you're hitting your gross movement patterns of going below parallel, of pulling from the ground, of going over, of moving your body through the functional range of motion that life and sport and, doing work demands. And then you're strengthening all of that musculature in your cardiovascular system in this systematic way that is sustainable and healthy and ideally makes nice incremental progress. Now, again, that progress will plateau, but those are the important things, like staying in the game and not just like, hey, I PR'd so-and-so today. That's super cool. Like celebrate it, but realize if you want to be doing this for decades, you're going to have a mindset shift eventually. So it may not be now, but just be open to the fact of this is a long journey that hopefully you're on.
Yeah, priorities change and as they should, right? Like you shouldn't have the same goal set when you're 21 as you do when you're 45. I think that's probably a little bit weird if people don't have any sort of evolution along those lines, even if there's some consistency broadly. But yeah, I was thinking about that too in terms of like what a PR means. The way that you're talking about it, what's kind of couched in that is that it's a lifetime PR. That's the assumption. And this is not my idea. I can't remember. I think it might have been actually one of the user comments, but I thought one of the best approaches I've heard is like, okay, every time I enter a new age bracket, I wipe the slate clean and I just start over again. Yeah. And it's like, okay, this is my PR for my 40 to 45 block of fitness. And so effectively you get to set a new baseline and set some new goals without the pressure of like, well, what did I do when I was 27? The answer is like, well, who cares? Because you're not there anymore. And this is the reality that you've got to deal with. So I think that's a cool way to do it. I think there's plenty of other ways that you can, if you're creative and you spend 5 minutes thinking about it, you can kind of reframe what it means to PR. That doesn't have to do with this absolute, what did I do at my very best when I was all in and young and hard charging? And if it doesn't stack up to that, it's worthless. Because it's like, man, that kind of mentality is, I can't think of a better way to sink your motivation a couple decades deep than living or dying by that.
Because look, people love games athletes, okay?
Sure.
We know this. They love games athletes. They idolize them. Cool. But you can be something equally as cool if you just hang in there and play the long game, because consistency wins. You're 25 years old and jacked. Now, don't get me wrong, that's great because most of America is not in good shape. If you're 25 and jacked, you don't get a second look. If you're 45 and fit, you're noticed all the time and questions get asked you. If you're 65 and fit, you are a unicorn. Like, it is ridiculous. I just did an interview with a gym owner from Sacramento, California, CrossFit. It's either Ocho Loco or Loco Ocho. It was the opposite of what I thought it was. I'm so sorry that I messed that up. But he just had a member turn 80 years old.
Hell yeah.
80.
That's awesome.
How cool is that? It's a woman. Her name is Dottie. I remember that because it was a perfect perfect name.
Mm-hmm.
And Dottie has just turned 80 years old, and Dottie goes to the gym multiple times a week. And I don't know Dottie personally, but all I need, Dottie's a beast. Dottie's a beast, like 100%. So like,
Yeah.
if you just stay in this game long term, you will be at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
You know, whether you've ever made it to the games or not, you'll be at the top of the mountain. And you're not going to have that sort of training longevity doing stupid things in the gym, doing too much on a regular basis, or learning things the hard way. Hopefully you learn from plenty of the mistakes that I've made and the ones that Adrian's made, and we get you on a better path sooner, is yet another point of these 200 episodes.
Yeah, don't put that evil on me. I don't make mistakes. I've been flawless.
Not a single
it's been
one,
a flawless
man.
Run from, yeah, totally.
Nothing but home runs.
That's right. Batting 1,000. One thing I'll say too, kind of to piggyback on that, is that's from the jiu-jitsu world. There's a, excuse me, sorry.
Still sick. Still sick.
Man.
Weak genes.
I'm telling you. It's mistake number one right there. Yeah, there's a guy named Chris Howder, who's one of the first, I think he's one of the first 12 guys to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as an American. So he's like, you know, one of the old school when that started coming over to the United States. He was an early adopter, and he's, you know, he does like some motivational speaking in that. He still instructs, and he's still very deep in that world. And one of the things he says all the time is like, hey, you're going to be somewhere in 10 years. You might as well be a black belt. And that's his whole deal, is like, hey, look, it's not about who's best. It's about who's left. And I think
like
those
that.
two things resonate really nicely when you start thinking about the long term in CrossFit. It applies the same way. It's like, hey, dude, you're going to be somewhere in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, hopefully, right? All going well. Hopefully you'll still be around, and you're going to be somewhere. You might as well still be capable. And that's what being consistent really offers. So,
100%.
A lot of power in that.
What was I just going to say? Does anything stick out in your mind of our shows or the interviews that we've done that, like, as something that blew your mind when you heard it or whatever? I'll lead. I have something, you know, that stuck in my head, so I'll lead off and maybe give you something to think about.
Okay.
We did this one recently. We did it with the 11-time kettlebell world champion, Denis Vasilev. That was episode 195, if people hadn't thought about, listened to it.
Yeah, and what a cool guy.
What a cool guy. And he said for like that long cycle kettlebell work that they do, like they do all these different training protocols, but one of the training protocols was basically 5 minutes of unbroken back squat. Or, you know, you can stop, but you can't rack the bar. It stays in your body. And you've got 5 minutes to ideally accumulate 100 repetitions. And I think he said that, like if you were going to do it with a pair of 70s, you'd have like roughly that weight on the bar or something like that. But long story short, he did 5 minutes with 225 pounds or 100 kilos on his back. And he got 100 repetitions in 100
Brutal.
back squats in a 5-minute window, and never unracked the bar from his back. Like, I mean, that's one of the things in all the stuff that I've heard, all the games athletes, all the strongmen, I heard that and I was like, what? Like, that is some of the most insane strength and mental toughness. And that dude's midline must be made out of titanium. Like, incredible to me. So that one, that sticks in my head anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll give you one similar. Like, you're just talking to Jerry Pritchard about just some of the casual numbers that he throws around, or like asking him where he started in the strength game, and some of the lifts he was capable of, just kind of like as a casual strength athlete as a young man. It's like, wow, you know, we're talking about a different beast at that point. Some of those things, and to hear him talk about his son also, who's getting down that road, and to hear some of his accomplishments at, I think he said 13.
He's
pretty mind-bending to hear about some of those things.
You know, the other thing a couple things that just stick in my head is the number one, scaling is cool, that we say all the time, and that links to the other point, which is almost few things trump consistency. Yeah. You know, like consistency, making smart decisions, and to be consistent, giving yourself grace, and then scaling workouts. You can't go overhead. You strained your calf running, like whatever it is. I'm not a medical professional, that's for sure. But a lot of times if you do something to your body, and if you are physical for long enough, you'll probably do something to your body. And it's probably not going to be something that means you have to do zero physical activity for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like if
Yep.
you allow yourself, again, perfection is the enemy of the good, that it's okay to scale the workout. It's okay for me to do one-arm dumbbell thrusters. It's okay for me to do something like I'm going to modify this and scale this because of my ability level, because I have a tweak, because I'm unfamiliar with the movement, because whatever it is, that keeps you consistent. That keeps you moving your body. That keeps
Mm.
you walking into the gym. That keeps you stacking those bricks. And then, unbeknownst to yourself, the days, weeks, and months go by, and you start to build this really robust capacity. Then, when you can start using that knee, can start using that shoulder again, instead of starting from absolute ground zero, you
Hmm.
have this amazing reserve to come back quicker, faster,
Yeah.
better. And so, that's just something that I would also it just resonates every time we talk to somebody new. They echo those same sentiments. And I would just put it out there to the viewers and listeners as well that scaling is cool. Keep yourself in the game.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll plus one that on the need for basic physical literacy. That's
Mm.
something that I think has been hopefully a phrase that listeners have heard come out of my mouth a few times. I think it's true for nutritional literacy and physical literacy. That's what everybody, in my opinion, that pilots this human animal should have a basic knowledge around. And that's one of the more powerful reasons to do it, so that when life throws a curveball at you, maybe it is an injury or it's a change in schedule or unforeseen circumstance, whatever, you have some basic tools that you can just adjust to get the job done. So in the case that you brought up with injury, okay, fine, I hurt my knee or whatever the case may be. I can sit down and in 5 minutes time, I can write out a list of things that I can still do and still push the needle forward
Mm.
that have nothing to do with my knee, and give me something to sink my teeth into. I can still get that consistency. I can still get a great physical stimulus out of it. And it's very empowering to know that, hey, yeah, you're perfectly capable of doing that. You don't need, like, it's great to have access to good coaches. And of course, there's value in that. But at the end of the day, man, every person should have that ability to say, all right, I can make a couple of decisions here. It's not really that hard to do. And I can still keep myself on that path, even if it looks a little bit different than it did the day before.
You know, something about that made me giggle and put something into my head about physical literacy and,
Yeah,
understanding that stuff is, I used this knowledge that we've gained over so long after I did have my total hip replacement that they gave me this just stapled together
sure.
rehab program that I threw out the window, and then, chatted with people like Dr. Sean Rocket and came up with like my own rehab program. And I remember I mentioned that on a show. And if you go back to whatever that show is, that I basically threw that out and did my own physical therapy. That some physical therapist left this like
Not happy about it.
scathing comment, and like
How could
so
you?
offended and just they were
How
so
dare you?
mad about. I
Yeah,
can't remember that I was being so
yeah,
negligent and putting out my negligence to the world. And I was like, I'm just telling my story. It's a true story. Like
yeah.
this is what happened. It seems to have gone pretty well, by the way. Oh, I just had one more thing. I think I've only got one more thing, unless you got
Yep.
another topic that we can launch into. And I'm gonna give you credit for this, and I always do when I say this, and I think it's so spot on. Um, that obviously I have an ego. I would love to say that the program that I write is the best program in the world. That's what I try to do. But I really like your definition of the best program in the world. So I'll leave people with this: is like, people want to know, like, what's the best program in the world, the best strength and conditioning program, the best fitness CrossFit program. And you've basically said it's the one that you'll stick with. And
Mm.
I think that's so true, because that links back to the consistency, to the stacking the bricks in the wall and all that. If you had some totally objective system of program A and program B, and you could rate that program A produced A plus results and program B produced B plus results. And you're like, great, I'm going to take the A plus one because it's scientifically proven. But for whatever reason, you hate doing it every day. It just doesn't bring you joy, and so your motivation goes down and down, and then you stop doing it, and a year goes by and you haven't done it because you hate it. Whereas so and so did B plus and they love it and it's fun and it's easy and they look forward to it every day. And 5 years later, they're still training. Well, guess what? They are 10 times fitter than you were because you didn't do the A plus programming. So like the best program is the one that you really enjoy, and that,
Yeah.
obviously you'd still like it to be competent and well thought out, but it's, if you don't stick with it, it is absolutely of no material value at all. So
Yeah, for
find
sure.
something that you love. And I don't even care if it's CrossFit. You just love kettlebells, dive in. You just
Mhm.
love
Yeah.
powerlifting, dive in. Because if you don't love it and you're like forcing yourself through just self-hate to do it every
Dude.
day, it's not going to go well.
Well, it's not going to last long either. I mean, there's a limit. Everybody's got a limit for how much they can tolerate with that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, man, most of us aren't paying the bills by our physical prowess, and so it should be enjoyable. I mean,
Hmm.
insofar as it can be. Like, obviously, it's going to be hard work, and there's going to be times when you're in the middle of some nasty workout where you're like, "This is terrible." Fine, but at the end of the
Right.
day, it should feel great, and it should facilitate you feeling great. And if it doesn't, day after day, man, good luck sticking with it. Dude, talk about tangent. You want to, let me see if I
Please.
can expand on this in kind of a rambly way. But, I've firmly entered my kind of old age of youth in my 40s, Pat. And as such, I've really started getting into, like a little bit of woodworking projects and things like that, as men of a certain age do.
Mhm.
And I've been reading
Been
a
known
lot
to
lately.
whittle a duck.
That's right. Yeah, I've been reading a lot lately about some of these different furniture movements, and there's some really interesting writing out there about different forms of furniture. And what's kind of apparent in that is that a lot of us have taste that we've adopted from people that we are not. You know what I mean? It's like we are modeling our tastes off some millionaire, billionaire somewhere,
Hmm.
and you don't have any business having that in your home, nor do you really like it. You just like it because it's what's been put in front of
Mm.
you. And
Hmm.
the tangent that I'm trying to connect here is I see the same thing happen with programs, where
Mm.
the average person who might be really into fitness and health, and they're just doing it for the love of the game, they see what they think they, quote, should be doing, and it's kind of put on them that that is the most important thing because some high visibility person either told them that or is showing them that that's what they do. Whether that's actually true or not is another story.
Hmm.
But the fact is that it's an adopted taste. And there's not enough people that say, you know what, that's not my taste, and nor is it serving my goals. And therefore, I don't have to engage like that for it to still be valid. So that's another thing I think, that to circle back to this whole physical literacy concept, man, if you have just a little bit of that, a little bit of knowledge to be dangerous, it's way easier to push back and be like, you know what, I don't think I do need to be working out 3 hours a day, 6 days a week to fulfill what I want out of this program. You know what? I don't think I need to have this super tweaked out lifting program in order to maintain a really respectable level of strength
Mm.
comparatively. You know what I mean? So, yeah, to all of that in an expanded, rambly way, don't let other people's adopted taste influence yours. Be objective about it. Take a look, see what you think, and see what is actually helpful for you in your situation, and use that as your matrix for decision.
What are some of the best wooden products that you can make?
Me personally,
Yeah.
dude, I just made a stool that I'm pretty stoked on, and I've got a series of chairs that I'm working on. So that's pretty interesting. And I'm building up to. I've got the wood that I've milled staked out for a coffee table and end tables, but that's down the road a little bit. But I'm getting there.
Literally handmade.
Yeah, yeah,
Very,
getting
very
closer.
cool, man. That's super. I mean, you sent me some photos, and you've got some legit skills. We'll have to have a
Working on it.
VNR shop. You need to make some VNR like cutting blocks, for the
Oh yeah,
kitchens, and like
sure. Hey, let me know.
that'd be
I'll
pretty
whip some of
awesome.
those up easy.
Well, as we close out show number 200, much appreciated,
Yeah,
everybody. We had no idea where this would be when we launched a long time ago. We're gonna keep going.
yeah,
This is everyone else's program and podcast, way more than it's mine or Adrian. So, as we always say, keep your thoughts, ideas, topics, comments coming in. Find this episode on the BTWB YouTube channel. Post your thoughts of maybe your favorite shows or topics over the last 200, or where you'd like to see us go. Cool people
yeah.
we should get on the show, topics, things of that nature. You can go to the Very Not Random Instagram account, post publicly there any of those things that I just said, or if you want to be more anonymous, send a direct message to the Very Not Random Instagram account, and all that stuff filters its way to us. So for Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood. Thanks everybody, and we will see you next time.